Gather round is gone. Best 22s are on. And my, oh my, are we at an interesting junction of your AFL fantasy season for 2025. It is officially upgrade season. Now is the time. If you have not yet done an upgrade, this is the week you should be able to finally start taking some of those cash cows, topping them out, and then be able to start accessing some of these players that we refer to them as premium performers, but have had a slower starts for one reason or another. Who are the guys that I recommend you should be trading into this week in AFL Fantasy? Again, I've got a top 10 trade list for you. And where are we starting off? It should come of no surprise where we're starting off. Caiden Cleary is my number one trade target this week. Just under 400,000. Okay, he's right on that $350,000 price mark, if we are honest. Two really nice performances back to back from him. And what I'm loving about his ability is I think he's a fieldable rook in our forward lines. I know that Port Adelaide matchup this coming week doesn't feel appetizing, but what I'm enjoying about what Caiden has been able to do is he's shown now over the last couple of weeks he can score in a different modes and in different ways. Well, yes, that work rate and intensity and the defensive pressure that he's bringing as a small, it is evident. We're seeing him impact the scoreboard in different ways in one week in contrast to the other. They're getting involved in marks or kicks or handballs in different ways. So he's finding a way to get it done and against different types of opposition defenders as well. I actually think it's a decent fieldable matchup this week. Some might choose Davidson, which I totally would understand. Others are upgrading in other areas and need to have him on field. I think you can do it. He's priced incredibly well. He is absolutely going to make you another 100 to 150,000. There is no Tom Papley over the next 5 weeks. He's got the security. He is performing. And while the Swans might have some changes coming to their side with, again, some disappointing performances of late, he's not one of those variables. To me, he's absolutely in. If I was making any downgrade, he is the guy. And with utility position, let alone 70 positional changes that have come in this just last few hours into the game of AFL Fantasy, you should have no reason through any player not to get into Caiden Cleary. He's not only the number one trade target for me this week, he's your number one downgrade option. In at number 2, because maybe you've already got Cleary, but again, you're looking for ways to access cash to be able to ultimately update and upload to a player that's heading towards premium territories. For me, Tom Gross would be the number 2 guy, just over that 300,000, sitting in that average in that 60s. He's shown now over a couple of weeks, again, against different types of performance, that he's a relatively durable, rounded scorer. I do not want him on field for what it's worth. I think when you've got the likes of Levi Ashcroft, Lindsay, you could throw a Davidson now into the mid. You've got a couple of options. I probably prefer not to have Gross on field, if I was honest. I feel like a 60s is about his range, which isn't bad for a guy at his price point, but I'm not falling over to happily take it on field as opposed to Cleary I would, or Trainer I would, or even a Reed. I would take those. I'd much rather happily find other avenues to get rookies on field and not this one, but I think it's still pretty good. Again, is it a double downgrade week? To me, it's probably not. I think it's one up, one down. There are some guys that have come at now available price points that you should be really looking to get into them. But for Cleary owners, Gross becomes an outlet. For non-Cleary owners, that's your priority. And then you're probably, as good as Gross's money making could and should be, we are seeing a high volume of rooks available to us at the moment. And I don't think he is essential. Cleary to me is pretty darn close. The guy that we've spoken about over the last few weeks in Riley Bice is a bit more, but no. Essential, no. Helpful, yes, but I think you've got to have Cleary. Speaking of Riley Bice, he's my number 3 trade target. The fact that still 1 in 2 coaches don't own him is criminal. Again, 2 weeks in a row now, he's had a 6-figure price jump. Absolutely phenomenal what he's doing. Another score in and around that average marker with a break even of negative 28. He's back up around that, another $100,000 of cash generation. He's heading fast towards 700,000. And not only that, in the vein of a Levi Ashcroft, is feeling very safe and comfortable for you to leave on field for a decent amount of time. He's playing a beautiful role that is fantasy favourable, that again, we're seeing such highs and lows in even our premium defenders, aren't we? We saw that last week where Zorko's in and around that sort of 90 range. Whitfield's in the 80. Josh Daicos was in around the 60s, as was a Bailey Dale just a week ago, despite Max Holmes this week just going 130. He was in that 60s, 70s range. So we are still seeing volatility of scoring out of our premium defenders. So to get 70s at a guy that now is half the price, but we were paying for it a quarter of the price point a fortnight ago, if you're not on Bice, you've had so many opportunities to do it, but he's still got so much money to make. And so I think you could still go there. I think if you haven't missed it, but you've missed a lot of money, I just don't think if you're not on him now, it's the one that's got away. Who's my number 4 trade target? So really, I've talked about 3 money makers. Let's give you a guy that I think could pop a decent score. And he's got a decent VC option on him this week. My number 4 trade target is Nick Daicos. Didn't bottom out as much as coaches had hoped with the James Jordan tag. It's the first time I can recall in a long, long time an opposition player putting Jordan to the sword, and did the same to Sheldrick when he came on as the sub. Absolutely just worked him over with work rate, his contest, and some of the hard edge stuff that Nick doesn't get credit for enough in the football community at large. He actually just showcased really well. Look, his last 3 games against Brisbane, if you're not including finals, have all been tons across the formats. But specifically in AFL Fantasy, there's some VC territory of decent types of scores through there. Again, the grand final is a different one altogether, but his last 3 games in home and away, all been tons in fantasy. I think you can get him. It's not as cheap as he was last week, but the narrative to get him last week wasn't there. It's still not an amazing fixture, but a guy that can do what he does at an average of 100 with a break even of 86, that just feels like a 105 is his baseline. Come on, friend. Here's your VC for the week. He's got a good history against Brisbane. I'm pretty happy to go and get this one. I'm happy to get Nick Daicos as my number 4 trade target. And then sitting in at number 5, it goes against all really essences of what we preach here at the coaches panel, but I do think we've got to put him as a trade target to talk about. My number 5 trade target this week is Zach Merrett. $1.131 million. Unbelievably expensive. But when you look at who they have from a fixture perspective, starting off this Friday night with West Coast coming off of this Melbourne game just gone, this is as good as 6 weeks of fantasy football matchups. And now that's not just using 2024 defense versus position data. This is looking at what we're seeing as trends that are emerging in 2025. It's as good as you could ask. And what I love about Merrett is he's getting it done at sometimes through goals. At other times, it's through work rate at stoppage and clearances. And other times, it's what he's doing around the ground and getting involved in transition and ball movement. And so this could be for the next 6 weeks the number 1 player in the game. You are paying for it. And this is where the friction will come for coaches, is because you've got it 100,000, if not more, cheaper. Players like Daicos, who I've just recommended. You've got a Tom Green, who, yes, has been saved by 2 big monster last quarters the last fortnight, but is in that range. Andrew Brayshaw, we talked about last week. None of these guys really sit in my top 10 this week, but they're still viable to get. They're all 100,000 cheaper than Merrett. Now, they got better scoring opportunities and captaincy considerations. Maybe not as strong, but what does that 100,000 do for you next week and the week after that and the week after that? And how big is the jump between a Daicos and a Merrett this week? And can that extra 100,000 accelerate you more with cash and upgrades in 2 weeks' time to get you 40 to 50 points ahead rather than just the 30 or 20 that you might do? It's a great conversation to have and a consideration, but to me it goes against the grain of buying at a player's basement price. This may just be Merrett's basement, but it's not basement in comparison to what others are doing for us. I get it. I understand the heart draw, but that extra bit of money, I just find myself heading to Daicos, heading to Green, heading to these cheaper options that I think could be within, if not in the same vein of what he is. So great pick. I would not talk anyone out of Merrett because I get it. I see it. I understand it why. But it does go against the grain of buying low. So that's my top 5. Cleary, Gross, Bice. They're my top 3. And then if you're looking to get something that's not just cash making, it's Daicos and then Merrett for me. That's my top 5. Want to know about the next 5? Let's hit you up. Nic Martin. Recently picked up forward status. Again, had an absolute field day from the uncontested possessions, the marks, and the easy +6s that he got in the game just gone against Melbourne. That role is still the same, right? And so despite him being now under $1 million and a break even that you can absolutely wait a week, you're looking at trying to maximise the matchups this week against West Coast. He is not an inside mid and he is not off half back. He is playing as a wingman and a high half forward. That's ultimately how he's picked up forward status, is spending more time forward than he is off the wing, at least from a starting at centre-bouts perspective. So I like him, not because I think he's an unbelievable scorer. These were the sort of games that last year when he had this volume of ball, both through disposals and marks, would be closer to 140s and 150s. But the fact is this fixture is so good, and at his price point, you can really run away with it. The challenge is you've got guys 100,000 cheaper that could go near him, and that might turn people off, but they're nowhere near as good as a fixture as what he is. So this is purely, in my eyes, it's a fixture play, and it's because you go, okay, in a couple of weeks' time, I like this matchup. I like this matchup. I like this matchup. Obviously, it starts this Friday night against the Eagles. It's not a top 5 trade-in priority for me. And while I've got him as a higher trade priority than other premium forwards, I think it's leveraging fixture over form on some of these other guys. And I get it. And that's why he's put in there for me. And that flexibility to flatten to that back line can just create some other opportunities. So I don't mind it. It's not a top 5 decision for me, but I'm very comfortable to do it given how good the fixture is. My number 7 trade target, still happy to get my hands on a Harry Sheezel. I think you can wait another week still, but I'd happily get him because, look, he spent a lot of time through the midfield this week. It sounds like Wardlaw's coming back. But he's still finding a way to score that sort of 100 range for us. And yes, he's dropped a little bit of cash, but not in the extremities. But we saw just a fortnight ago now, or 10 days ago, if he gets anything near behind the centre of the ball and the freedom to create, this is where he's an absolute knockout pick. He's still value. I think you could wait another week on it as well. And it's a little bit more pricey than a Nic Martin, who, again, that defender forward split just jumps him over Sheezel for me. But we know this is one of the best defenders we're going to get available to us this year. We know we want to trade into him at some point. We'd love to get it at under $1 million. Not too sure we'll get that, but going at 106 for the season, a break even at 122. Decent couple of matchups coming up. I want to see how this forward line, midfield and defensive line really works once Wardlaw comes in and they've got the full complement of the rotation options to run through there. Want to see how that works. So to me, it's not a high trade target priority, but it's an important one because let's be honest, it's not been a bad starting pick. And I don't know if at any point in time in the year, it's going to be a bad time to get onto Harry Sheezel. Last 3 guys I've got for you as trade targets this week in AFL Fantasy. It is getting to, well, the loss of value at this point in time to trade into Jason Horne-Francis. We put him on this episode just 7 days ago. We're bringing him back here again. He has jumped up in cash, and that break even is still unbelievably attainable, more so than last week. He's now put 2 consecutive AFL Fantasy tons in a row, hence the term consecutive, and he's looking much better. If you haven't gone on to Jason Horne-Francis to this point of time of the year, it's because ultimately you've been rewarded that he didn't punish you over the first month of the year. You've run the gauntlet. You knew the ownership was high. It's 49%. You knew that if he got on that run with that great early fixture, he could take the season very much away from you and it would really hurt. Well, he's dropped some money, not as much as 7 days ago, but he's dropped some money, he's dropped a couple of tons, and now you're able to get him at a cheaper price point, and you've dodged the poor scores, and now you're able to get some value out of him. Do you have to go him this week? No, of course not. I think his ceiling's not as good as a Martin. I still want to see some elements, but I would also not say that Horne-Francis is a must own this year. I think Rankin's really proving that he was of all our expensive forwards, was the one to get. Daniel and McRae and Smith, politely, you should have already. And now we've picked up guys like Petracca. We've picked up a Martin. We've picked up others that are genuine, knocking on the door, that could compete with what Horne-Francis can be. And so I actually don't think you have to own Jason Horne-Francis, because we know that his peaks, he's a good 110 on his day, but as those that had him for the first month, then a 60 is not out of the consideration. Whereas some others, that kind of highs and lows is not as there. So is he an essential buy? I don't think he's an essential buy. But if you think he's going to be close enough to one of our top line forwards, which I do believe he is, this is great value. And he's just not offering as much week in, week out. So a break even of 73 means even with 100, he's still obtainable and under 900k next week, but you're losing that value every single week you choose to go against him or go into other options. Clearly, he's in my top 10. He's number 8. I'm very happy to trade into him and to advocate for it, but he's also not the most critical trading option this week. Not going to lie, it was really close between the hyphen, the franchise, and the guy I've got at number 9, not just because they've got similar positions and similar price points, but I actually think the fixture really opens up after this week for Christian Petracca. He's my number 9. It's Fremantle this week, but then the fortnight after that is as good as it gets for midfielders and high half forwards. And I think finally, it might not be this week against Freo at the G, but the 2 weeks after that, bang, bang, we should finally see Melbourne get some victories. And I think we could see some really big scores from CP5. Under 900,000 now. That break even is just that fraction higher than his average. But I saw some good trends last week against the Bombers and without kicking a goal too. So to me, that's really positive. His work rate is back. His energy is back and around the ground. I think there's enough here to suggest you can go into it. You can also wait that week. It's why Daicos is probably a higher priority to me this week, because while Daicos, I look at what he is right now with that break even of 86 and he's 150 odd thousand more, he's much harder to get into in a week's time if he pops the 105, 110 than what a Petracca is. So that's where I'm prioritizing. And with an Ashcroft forward, a Davidson forward, a Cleary, I could just work my way through it. That said, I think this is a top line premium AFL fantasy forward for us. He is, honestly, he'll be higher on my trade targets next week. I'm just letting you know. Go and check that fixture. Look at who they've got after this Fremantle game. And that's not a bad matchup, by the way, either, but it's not as juicy as the 2 after that. He'll be top 5 next week. That's all I'm going to lead you to the waters of. And then my last trade target this week at time of recording, I think he's the most traded in player in fantasy. If he's not, he's definitely top 2. Saad El-Hawli, 260,000, got a negative break even. The reason he's not any higher, and the fact that he's owned in 30% of teams is wild to me. It shows a lot about teams that either just left him there to start the year, or that have traded into him expecting more. The only reason he's not higher is the fact that he's been sub 2 games in a row. And look, he's looked good when he's come on the field, but there's not been an injury or an issue that's happened through the wings or the halfback flanks permanently to their team that has caused me to be like, all right, he's free of the sub. Ask anybody that has been a Hasty owner or a Berry owner or a Nevitt owner in the last month. And when a player gets green vested, it really stalls cash, and you need a Garcia type full game, absolute knockout to regenerate that cash. And so the reason Saad is not any higher for me is not because I don't think he's a bad downgrade. He's clearly a top 4 moneymaker for me. I've got Cleary, I've got Gross, and I've got Bice as better options that'll make money as their priority. So he's still high, but the fact that to me his green vest concerning most games, let alone probably red, is a little bit of an alarm for me. But still a handy option if you've got Cleary, you've got Gross, you've got Bice, you're killing the cash generation, and you still need to jump out of a player like I'm not saying you should do these players, but like Pryor, like Davidson, like Sanders, like De Koning. He makes a perfectly valuable way to get there, especially should he get named on Thursday night. And those are my top 10 trade targets. Are they similar to yours? Is there a player you're looking to trade into this week, or a player you're looking to move out? I'd love to know. Why don't you comment below and let me know what your AFL Fantasy planned trades are for the week. If you're enjoying the videos that you are getting from us here at the Coaches Panel and you haven't subscribed, friend, could you click that button? It would make a huge impact to us here at the Coaches Panel. And of course, turn those notifications on. We've got videos dropping all the time throughout the week, helping you with your AFL Fantasy side. We'll be back this week. A strategy session is going to land. Our Super Coach trade targets, if you play that format, got that coming for you later in the week. And then on the platform of Keeper, where you can play draft, single season or dynasty or keeper leagues, they are having their second round of dual position changes at the end of round 6 over your Easter long weekend. We'll drop a video for you that will talk you through who we think are going to be some players that you should be looking to that might just pick up an additional positional status. Hey, good luck this week. Let us know the trades you've got planned in AFL Fantasy below. And we can't wait to talk about your AFL Fantasy side and help you heading into another round of footy real soon.